Because if you're blocking the things that you actually want, how is more going to come to you? That's what this is really all about at the end of the day. When you block your blessings, you're also blocking someone else from getting something that maybe they need, or maybe that would make them feel good. Maybe what the other person needs is an opportunity to be generous. Hello and welcome to the Unlock Lab. I'm your host, Tosca, and I'm so glad that you're here. This episode is so near and dear to my heart because today I'm going to talk to you about stopping the phenomenon where you are blocking your blessings. And I say this with all the love in my heart and all the awareness of the fact that I used to do this all the time. I used to block blessings. I blocked myself from receiving. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why this happens. We're going to talk about what are the ways that we block our blessings, because you may not be aware. You may not even be conscious about it because it's so habitual and it's just the way that you do things and the way that you respond. So we're going to talk about all of that. But before I do, if you're new to the podcast, I just want to pause and say welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This episode is sponsored by my company, Tosca Coaching and Consulting. And what I do is I talk to audiences, large and small. I do leadership coaching and one-on-one coaching to help ambitious professionals at the intersection of personal growth and professional breakthroughs. If you want to learn more about what I do, visit CoachTosca.com. That's CoachTosca.com, and learn more about how I can help you with your career breakthrough. Okay, so let's get at it. My first question to you is, do you block your blessings? I want you to sit and think about it, What's your gut reaction? And maybe it's a situation where you're aware that you block yourself from receiving in certain situations, but in other situations, you're happy to receive. And it's really important to recognize those situations that you are habitually blocking your blessings, because when we do it, even if it's in a small area of your life or a small percentage of the time, unlocking that can unlock so many other areas of your life. I say this all the time, that when we have behavior patterns that are specific, it doesn't mean we get to ignore them. It means that there's a really miraculous unlock that's possible by taking a closer look at that. Okay, so I'm going to run through some examples of what it looks like to block your blessings. So if you've got a pad in front of you, I highly recommend making note of the ones where you're like, oh, I think I do that, because then you can go back to it and investigate it further. Okay, so the first one I want to share with you is actually one that can be sneaky. And this is the phenomenon of overgiving, because overgiving can lead to no space for others to reciprocate, to even attempt to give to you. So I'll give you one example of this. If you are hosting a party and your guests want to contribute something to your party, but you've literally covered everything. If you're like, I have every drink, I have all the desserts, I have all the food, I have the appetizers, I have the napkins, I've got everything, then you aren't giving them an opportunity to contribute. You may even say to them, oh, just bring yourself. And they asked you, what can I bring? Now I get it. And I'm like a hostess with the mostest. Okay. I love hosting. And I have been in this situation where when I've hosted, I've done exactly what I'm saying to you. And I don't leave space for people to contribute because A, they want to. And B, it's a whole lot easier if you can tell them what would actually be supportive and helpful sometimes than just leaving it up to what they're going to do because they're going to do it anyway. And a really recent example of this is when my husband and I hosted a get-together for Memorial Day. We were really conscious about, okay, if people ask us what to bring, we want to have answers. And let me tell you, 10 years ago, this would not have been the case. I would have said, just bring yourself. But this time, let me tell you, two different people asked what they could bring. And the answer was like dessert. Dessert sounds great. Cause you know what? Then we didn't have to worry about that. And that was actually like a big burden lifted off of our shoulder because A, we're not baking. So that means we're going to go somewhere to get a dessert. And it's not just going to be like the closest place. We have to get like a dessert that's actually good, right? So that's going to be a special trip. Probably means getting in the car. And if you know anything about Brooklyn, you try to avoid getting in a car. Anyway, so this is a beautiful example of like, if you are overgiving and you are leaving no space for people to contribute, that means you are blocking your blessings and you may never know what could have been possible because you're not leaving that space. Kind of in line with this is another example of when you insist on paying the bill for something like all the time. And maybe it's with one person all the time, or maybe it's just in general. You just are uncomfortable with anybody else ever picking up the bill for lunch or dinner or drinks or whatever. Again, guilty as charged. There were years of my life where I felt like I had to take care of the bill every time. And regardless of if somebody pushed, I would not let them win. What this could possibly be saying underneath this behavior is that you're saying to yourself, I'm not worthy of this abundance, that I have to overgive in order to receive. And some of this is my story. And I'm just sharing, to investigate. If you have this habit of not letting other people pick up a tab, look deeper into why do I block this? Why do I feel like I can't say yes to that? And let me tell you, my life has changed since I changed that behavior. Because now I get to be in the joy of receiving somebody buying me a meal. And actually, it's pretty freaking nice. That's a big one, I think. And, part of that might be making assumptions about what other people can or cannot afford. And you feeling guilty or you feeling like, oh, that you're going to, put them into a hardship. But by telling yourself this stuff, you're actually not honoring whatever the truth is. You're not actually honoring what it is that they want to do for you. And that hurts both ways, right? And this next example is probably really common, right? With this idea of dismissing compliments or dismissing acknowledgments. Again, guilty as charged. When you get a compliment, do you say, oh, this old dress? Oh my gosh, I got this at Target, and you kind of dismiss it or deflect it, or somebody's acknowledging you for something really nice that you did, and you're saying, it wasn't a big deal. Forget about it. No worries. This is actually blocking the blessing of receiving a compliment, of receiving acknowledgement, of actually being seen for who you are, for what you do, all those things. And it might be really small, but it adds up to dismiss this. And I'll just say right now that one of the things I learned to do around this was to say, thank you. I received that. I forced myself into this habit rather than the habit that I had, which was to quickly dismiss and say, because even like not a problem is dismissing that somebody's expressing appreciation for you. Take it for what it is. And, you can experiment too with what happens if you did change that habit and say, thank you, I do receive that. And take that pause and receive what that compliment really is. I think it will change the course of your day. I really do. Another thing that we do in terms of blocking our blessings is we put up walls of self-protection so that you're not disappointed by others. Now, I think literally my second podcast episode ever was about putting up walls of self-protection. This is a big one. And you know what, if this resonates with you, go back and listen to that episode for sure. By putting up walls of self-protection, this can be really energetic, right? Like you create this energetic barrier from people to do things for you, to offer to do things for you, to take things off your plate. And that energetic wall that you've created actually is what influences folks to not even try. Perhaps that force field that you create reads to them as like, I don't need your help. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons why we put up walls of self protection that end up not only keeping bad things out, but they actually keep the good things out too. That's the difference between a boundary and a wall. That's what I talk about in some of those earlier podcast episodes. But I need to bring it up here because, this is what I liken it to. Okay. Like in high school, right? I walked around acting pretty hard, acting pretty tough, right? As a way to make sure like nobody's messing around with me. And because I walked around like that, I don't know what I was keeping out. I was keeping out the folks that were maybe going to mess with me. And I was probably also keeping out the folks that were nice and wanted to engage. So that's a real, old school example, but hopefully it gives you that picture of what happens when you walk around or you walk around the neighborhood, right? And you're just like, I don't want to talk to nobody. You might be blocking your blessing and you don't even realize it because you've got that face on or you've got that, I don't know, stone coldness in your heart for all the reasons because you don't want to be disappointed, you don't want to be hurt, you don't want to be messed around with, and that has other implications as well. If we've been in modes in our life where we really had to protect ourselves, and that may have been, let's just say in your own home, God forbid, but like if you've been in those situations where survival was about putting up walls of self-protection, then of course that is going to carry with you in your life until you do the healing from that, until you figure out how to live your life without walls of self-protection, but instead having healthy boundaries. So I'm going off on a tangent on that one, but that is a big one. All right, so I'm just going to shift and talk about some other ways that it looks to block your blessings. The next one is about habitually turning down help or support. And this might be so automatic, like you don't even give yourself a hot second to consider. Like, oh, do I actually need this? Do I want this? And you can go back to episode 60 that talks about that big question that can help unlock our life, which is asking ourselves, what do I need? But if you habitually turn down support, maybe it's, hey, do you want me to do the dishes? Or, hey, do you want me to take the kids out so that you and your husband can have like a quiet night together? Or, hey, do you want help moving? Or, all of the above, right? And some of these may sound really big. Maybe you've never had those situations, but it can also be like, hey, do you want me to bring in your mail? You want me to do something to make your life easier? And you may be turning those things down without even thinking. And there's a whole lot of reasons why our rugged individualism mentality that we have, which is so damaging and destructive. But part of what I want you to do is pay attention and to maybe do an inventory and say, when was the last time somebody asked me, did I say yes? And just start to investigate for yourself what the truth is. Another thing that you do to block your blessings is not respond to texts of people that are wondering how you're doing, that are reaching out. Now, there might be some fake folks out there that you're ignoring, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about ignoring the genuine folks in your life who really care about you, who are checking in on you, and you leave them hanging or you ghost them or whatever, or you don't prioritize that. That is another way that you block your blessings. And this is one of those things that can add up because it tells the universe, hey, I don't need other people, or you're taking it for granted or something. But these are the things that we block that actually have the opportunity to change our life. Saying no to invitations is another thing that we do. And I'm not talking about saying no to invitations from people that you don't want to spend time with. I'm saying no to people that you actually like, but you always seem to find a reason to say no. You always make an excuse. Oh, I'm too tired. I'm too busy. That thing is too expensive. And look, I'm not saying don't honor what actually works for you and what you need. What I'm saying is it's a blessing, right? To be asked to spend time together with somebody you care about. And if you're constantly saying no, then you're blocking the blessing of getting some amazing memories in your memory bank to take with you in life. And, there's other things deeper that can impact this if you have social anxiety. Like so take it for what it is. But when we block connection, we're missing out. And that's what I want to prevent for you. I don't want you to miss out on living your best life. Another way that you block your blessings, and this may sound funny to some people is that you're not sharing your feelings. Because when you don't share the truth about what you're going through, that messy middle yucky stuff, the feelings that are maybe hard, but maybe the feelings that are good too. Maybe you don't share the joy. You don't share how elated you are. And some of that might be you're afraid somebody's going to be jealous, or it might be that you tell yourself, well, I don't want to burden somebody else with my problems and my heavy feelings. But what happens when you do this is you prevent yourself from being supported in the difficult feelings that you face. You are preventing getting support. Now, if you're not sharing those happy feelings, those joyful feelings, you're also preventing somebody from feeling that themselves, because that joy is contagious and you're preventing that joy from spreading. And that's just such a shame for you and for everybody else. Think about it that way as well. And again, all of this has nuance, right? Because, sharing difficult feelings with people that can't hold space for it, that's one thing. But what I'm talking about is those people that you can trust and that will sit there and be with you in those feelings. The ones that can celebrate with you, but you're not sharing it because you're afraid that it's going to make them feel bad about themselves. You are denying yourself and you're denying those around you from what it gives them to be able to be with you in whatever you're feeling. Okay. And I know I'm giving a lot of examples, but that's because I think that a lot of people are out there, maybe you included, that are blocking blessings that you just don't even see, because this is stuff that's so habitual. So the last example I'll give is maybe declining opportunities. Maybe it's opportunities at work, maybe it's outside of work, maybe it's in community, but opportunities that will help you to grow. And maybe you decline these opportunities because you're fearful that you're not going to do a good job, or you're afraid you're not going to like it. There's a million excuses. But what happens is when we decline a door that's being opened for reasons of self protection, for scarcity, fear based reasons, then we are missing out on receiving what could be a great blessing. And that blessing might be something that you learn, something that you grow into, somebody that you meet, some other joy that you didn't even know was available to you. So be careful about what you're declining. And are you declining a blessing? And you can ask yourself, in what way could this opportunity be a blessing? And just to consider that. I think you started to see what it's really all about when we look deeply at our habits of blocking our blessings. It's about putting up walls. It's about perhaps feeling not worthy of what's being presented to us. Rugged individualism is a big part of it in terms of blocking support and help. It's also about being jaded about people and situations. Maybe it's about being worried that something will be held over your head because of past experience. And all of this is really laddering to the baggage that we bring. It could also be about cultural norms, what may come from your origins. It may just be so deeply embedded about what's okay to receive and what's not, that you're just continuing that pattern, but you're hurting yourself and you're hurting future generations because you're not breaking those patterns that aren't serving you. Maybe it's about avoiding disappointment if the other person can't deliver on what they're saying they're going to do for you. Or maybe it's about perfectionism and you're just so closely tied to wanting things your way that you won't let in any other support. You won't let in anybody else to take something off your plate because you'd rather do it your way and struggle with that, So these are some of I think, the underlying themes that happen under this idea of not giving ourselves permission to receive. I want to talk a little bit about how do we stop doing this? How do we stop blocking our blessings? I'm going to give you some thoughts on this to get you started with this work. Look, if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know that the first thing is really about paying attention to what's being offered, which means you got to slow down. You got to slow down And if your immediate reaction is no, then I want you to instead pause and think about what is being offered. And maybe that means not answering right away. Maybe it means, you know what? Let me consider what you're offering and I'll let you know. Or maybe it's a not right now versus a no. But it's really about slowing down, asking yourself, why did I immediately want to say no to this? And is that serving me or not? Another thing you can do to kind of stop this blocking is to experiment with saying yes. Experiment, see what happens. Trust yourself and say, you know what? Okay, I usually like this done a certain way, but okay, I'm going to see what happens. And you may discover a whole new way or a whole new outcome that you didn't even imagine that you actually like better. So experiment with the yeses, experiment with the receiving. Another way to stop blocking your blessings is to check in with your body because it might be your mind that jumps in and says no, but your body actually is open, is excited, and you're not paying attention to it. So check in with your body. Now, if you're feeling triggered by the support that's being offered to you, ask yourself, what is triggering about this? Why does this make me feel a certain kind of way? Why does this make me want to flee? And that might just be because you're just not used to it. Because when we are in situations that we're not used to, even if they're healthy, it may feel uncomfortable because we're not used to dealing with that positive thing. Because maybe we're used to the opposite. Maybe we're used to being denied the support. Maybe we're used to being told, you don't need any help, do it on your own. And so the opposite of that might feel really uncomfortable, not because it's a bad thing, but because your nervous system isn't used to it. So, how do you stop blocking that? Is by starting to pay attention to that feeling that comes and deciding what you want to experiment with. And that might also involve having a grounding practice so that you can feel safe in your own skin, so that when things do come your way that are good, you start to feel more safe with saying yes to the good things. And you know what? This awareness might be hard to do in the moment. So at the end of the day, you can check in with yourself and say, hey, let me just go through my day. Let me flip through it a little bit and see, was there anything that was offered to me that I dismissed or declined or didn't receive properly or didn't receive fully? So you can do that as like a daily practice as well. And I think the last kind of piece of advice I'll give you around how do you stop this pattern of blocking your blessings is ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about why it's not okay to receive this thing, to receive this love, to receive this abundance, to receive this support? And you can ask yourself what story you're making up about it and check in and ask, well, what is the truth? What is the truth of this situation? Because, for example, you might be telling yourself a story of, oh, they're just offering this because they want something from me. Whereas the truth might be, you don't know why they're being generous, but they are. And are you willing to take that at face value? Gosh, I know we talked a lot about this and such an important topic, I think, to unlock your life, to unlock more goodness that's available to you, to magnetize more of what you want. Because if you're blocking the things that you actually want, how is more going to come to you? That's what this is really all about at the end of the day. And one of the things I want you to really remember, which may shift your kind of framing around this topic, which is that when you block your blessings, you're also blocking someone else from getting something that maybe they need or maybe that would make them feel good. Maybe what the other person needs is an opportunity to be generous, an opportunity to express gratitude. Perhaps the other person is in the process of their growth of being comfortable with their resources and getting out of a scarcity mindset. So when you allow that exchange, it's a gift not just to yourself, but it's a gift to the other person. And, that's something you could also deeply explore, which is what's possible for the other person by receiving this. Maybe they feel better because they were able to help somebody else. Maybe they feel lighter because they were less selfish today than they were yesterday. So I hope that this has resonated with you. I hope that there's some things that you can take away to bring more of what you want into your life, to get unstuck from whatever rut you may be in. And if this episode was helpful for you, please send it to a friend that you think needs to hear it. And also on whatever platform you're listening on, follow this podcast, rate it, like it, review it, what have you, because that will just help more people get the message that I share with you today and every week. So thank you for being here with me today, for listening to the bitter end. Hopefully it's not a bitter end. Hopefully it's a sweet ending with the reminder that you are deserving, you are enough, you are worthy of the goodness that comes to you. And I don't say this like a damn Instagram meme. I say this because I know the journey that I've had to take and that I take with my clients to honor that regardless of what we've been through in our lives, regardless of the muck that we've had to survive and walk through, that we get life to be easier, that we deserve life to come to us in beautiful ways, that it doesn't always have to be about struggle. It doesn't always have to be about sacrifice and about giving to others. It doesn't always have to be about taking care of others, that we get to be taken care of as well. We get to have our needs met. We get to be supported in ways that we didn't even realize we needed. We get to receive things that we didn't know would make us even happier or bring joy into our life. So I hope that you remember, if nothing else from this episode, that it's okay to receive your blessings. It's your birthright. Thank you for being here with me, and I look forward to seeing you next time in the Unlock Lab. And ciao for now.